Hey guys! So, today we're gonna ask, we're not gonna ask a subscriber question, that would be weird. We're gonna answer a subscriber question. So let's get into it. So the question is, should we, when we're doing layouts in CSS, use breakpoints as opposed to using a liquid layout? Now let's first and foremost define the differences here. So, a breakpoint-based system or a responsive layout that uses breakpoints is basically, for the juniors out there, the idea that you use media queries, which allows you to declare, or rather to query, when the browser is resizing, or depending on which browser and device you're accessing the web page from, you can actually declare that, all right, your styling should be applied at certain breakpoints. So say 320 pixels, 768 pixels, these natural breakpoints and above, of course. So you can declare when the browser is going to use one set of styles versus another set of styles. And on the flip side, a liquid layout uses something which we call relative units. EMs, RMs, percentages, that sort of thing. In other words, it's always relative, like these units are always relative to the viewport and to the content that is actually on the page. Now, the discussion goes kind of back and forth between whether or not you should use breakpoints as opposed to using these relative units. So when it comes to breakpoints, the limitation here, which is the criticism that a lot of the people who are promoting the idea of using liquid layouts are talking about, is that you now need to know the different breakpoint buckets. And the most common arguments that I hear for this, against this sort of style and using the liquid layout instead, is that you now need, as I said, you need to know what viewports you're going to work with. And for the most part, this is fairly standard viewports. I mean, if you go into your developer tools in your browser and you have a look at that, there are actually predetermined widths, pixel sizes, if you will, where these breakpoints naturally occur on devices. And the liquid layout people will tell you that this is the sort of thing that it's not very future-proof, because it is true. You could be on a screen width that is not standard. You could be resizing your browser window. There are all kinds of things that could make your layout kind of deviate from the standard dimensions. And this is absolutely true. Another aspect of it is that, you know, if there is actually a new device that comes out to your page, it's going to fail for that very reason. On the other side of things, you have breakpoints. Like when you have breakpoints, the thing is that when somebody, when the subscriber was asking me this, I can only tell you what this is the sort of thing where I know what we should be doing, and I know what is being done, and I'm going to give you both. My perspective on this is that liquid layouts it's a great thing that you should be using under one or a few very specific circumstances, because unfortunately what a lot of the people who are promoting this sort of thing are forgetting or are missing is the key, like the complexity versus the value. The cost-value ratio is a little bit off when it comes to this sort of thing, because the idea that you should create a solution that is completely liquid has a few limitations. The benefit is that, as we said, we don't have to care so much about the viewport, because we are always certain that our layout is going to naturally flow in the correct manner. We're going to have content that looks nice on every possible screen size. But then you come to the question, all right, how often is it that you're going to have a non-standard view screen size? Not that often. In fact, I was looking at a report just the other day that says that there's roughly of all the internet users, 3.08% of the people have ever even changed their standard font size, which is something that would be very relevant if you had, say, EMs or REMs. That's how low that number is. So when it comes to standard viewports, they're actually so standard today that you would have to, as I said, in theory, there could be a new device coming out. And what I argue about that is that, all right, so you're going to design here and today a layout that adds complexity, because a liquid layout is more complex than a breakpoint-based one. Not maybe for you, because this is the thing that I was like, because there are tons of these articles with Rachel, Andrew, and the others who are talking about CSS Grid and all that stuff, and it's great. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing this. I'm just saying that you have to consider the impact of this. It's the same thing, the same sort of enthusiasm that I see for functional programming and monads and all that stuff. If you are the expert, if you know your shit really, really well, and this is the thing that you should be doing, that's great. But the problem is that you're not alone on your project. Or maybe you are, because what I find very hilarious is that a lot of these bloggers who talk about these sort of layouts, they seem to always work from the perspective that they are the only person maintaining this. And I think that they are. It's something that seems to be very, like almost a red thread through all of these more, especially in web design, where you have a single designer, a single person who comes up with this genius solution to a problem, and they get really excited about it, they start blogging about it. And the thing is that as somebody who works with several other people of different ranges of skill, I can immediately see that this is going to be a lot trickier for me to maintain, not just because of myself, but because maybe I understand it perfectly, but it's not that approachable for everybody else. And a liquid layout is such a thing, because instead of having pixel values with breakpoints, which are very comprehensible to basically everybody working overall on the web, liquid layouts require a lot more. It's a more complicated problems, because now you're working with a lot different considerations, because now you actually have to test, if you really think about it, you have to test your content flow from the entire range of things. Now this may not be a big problem, but it is something that is less approachable, I would argue, than the breakpoints. But that does not mean that I don't think we should be using liquid layouts, because it is, if you think about it, it is a more stable and a more long-term good solution as opposed to having breakpoints. But as you know, I will always talk about the cost-value ratio. In my opinion, the cost-value ratio is off, because it's the same sort of idea that, all right, we're going to create this super generic super code module or component or whatever, and it's going to work forever, and you start doing that before you even have a problem. For me, it's basically premature optimization, because trust me when I say this, if there was a new device that came out that didn't fit with a breakpoint solution, do you really think that this is going to cause a major issue? Weigh it against the alternative, weigh it against the cost of maintaining a liquid layout. Like, is as of right now, is a liquid layout the best solution for everything right at this point in time, right now? Is this the best thing, all things considered? Not from just an engineering perspective or a design perspective or something like that. It's about maintenance, simplicity, all of these other factors come into it. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people forget when they get kind of riled up about these more fancy techniques. They forget that either they get more enthusiastic about the thing than the value of the thing that they're getting enthusiastic about is actually providing. So what I will tell you is that when I use a liquid layout, and I completely always use relative dimensions, your units, is when I know that I have to support the full range of possible devices and possible screen sizes, like everything, and all the browsers, all the screen sizes. It's very rare that I have had to have this sort of consideration. The only time I would say that this sort of mindset is really valuable is if you work with a company or for, say, a government or something like that, where accessibility and the page absolutely working under all circumstances. You cannot at any point use a no script tag. You can at no point not have ARIA tags or accessibility discussions or anything like that. It should work for absolutely everybody. Then this is a really nice solution, because this will ensure, although it is more costly to test and to build and to maintain, it's going to guarantee that you will be future-proof, basically, because it will always scale to any screen and any device and any browser. But when it comes to simplicity, breakpoints is the way to go. And I can tell you right now, almost I would say every single company I've ever worked for, I never even talk to somebody who works with only relative like liquid layouts, breakpoints are virtually, it's basically the way that most companies work with, you know, layout and so forth. And if you think about it, even the designers work with breakpoints, because when the designer designs artboards, and that artboard is also based on screen widths, you're designing for a specific device, and these standard breakpoints, these buckets, are doing they're doing the job just fine. So you have to kind of, as I said, make a way off here. The norm is to use breakpoints, but liquid layouts are more powerful. But there's a cost to that power as well. So weigh that off before you should pick one or the other. And if I'm going to finalize and say something, the ideal is to use liquid layouts. But the cost is, in my personal opinions, too high for it to be the default. It shouldn't be the default. Have a great day.